BecomeATVWriter.com presents 3 tips to writing a great spec script. When I was a little girl, one of my favorite things to do was to color. I'd get my crayons, my favorite coloring book, and I'd find somewhere really comfortable, and I would create for hours. Now, what does that have to do with writing a great spec script, you ask? Well, in a coloring book, you're given an outline, and then you choose the colors, and then you color the outline in order to bring the picture to life. Since a spec script is a sample episode of a show that is currently airing, writing a spec is a lot like coloring. The television show, that's your outline since the world is already created for you, and then you choose the storylines as you would the colors you want to color with. And then you write the script or color it in to bring it to life. So here are 3 tips to make your spec script a masterpiece. Tip number 1, choose the right show. Ask yourself the following questions. Is this one of my favorite shows? Is this a binge-worthy show? Is it at least in its 2nd season? Is it a fan favorite and or critically acclaimed? If your answer isn't yes to all of those questions, it is not the right show for you to spec. It needs to be your favorite show so you know the world very well. You need to watch a lot of episodes so you can be accurate in your writing. It also needs to be a series executives and readers that will be rating your script are familiar with. And lastly, it needs to be something the reader will be excited to read. So you want to choose the right show. Tip number 2, create the perfect storyline. Ask yourself the following questions. Is this a storyline the show would do? Is my storyline close to the storylines the series has already done, but they haven't done this one yet? Is the storyline something I can explain in 3 sentences or less? Is the storyline something I can read over and over again? If your answer isn't yes to all of those questions, you haven't thought of the perfect storyline for your spec script. Your main objective in writing a spec is to demonstrate your ability to mimic a show as closely as possible. Think of all the stories that this show could possibly do. Make a long list. You don't want to leave anything out. Now you need to put a spin on 1 or 2 of those ideas, and you don't want to do it in an obvious way. The best way to do that is to think of a specific example that's true to you and your life experiences. Now make it applicable to the characters in that show. Tip number 3, execute in a way that's expected yet unexpected. Okay, you've chosen the perfect show for you to write, and you've come up with the best storyline for that show. Now what do? You write. Here's the tricky part. You have to do so in a way that demonstrates your writing voice without straying too far away from the show's tone. Think of it like this. Let's say we're coloring again, and we need to color in a forest. Once I used the shavings of a green and brown crayon, and I just smeared it over with my fingers. When I was done, you were still able to see that it was a forest, yet I did so in a way that was unique. The same is true for writing your spec. You are expected to write an episode that is familiar, but it also needs to be fresh and express your perspective. If you can think of a better way to shade in the story, do it, as long as it still resembles the show. Let's review those 3 tips. Tip number 1, choose the perfect show for you to spec. Make a wise choice. Tip number 2, prove that you're an expert by creating the perfect storyline for your spec script. Tip number 3, execute. Make the story familiar while still being unique. Well, that's all for now. For more tips, visit BecomeATVWriter.com. Let me help you become a TV writer.